Good evening and welcome to What's Your Story? Tonight's episode is If I Can Help Somebody. That phrase is taken from the words of an old Negro spiritual, which reads in part, if I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word or a song, then my living shall not be in vain. You may not think of social workers as being a part of the vanguard of human rights, but they are. Here are a few of the many contributions that social workers have made to society. Because of their struggles, the civil rights of all people, regardless of race, gender, faith, or sexual orientation, are protected. Workers enjoy unemployment insurance, disability pay, workers' compensation, and Social Security. People with mental illness and developmental disabilities are now afforded humane treatment. Medicaid and Medicare give poor, disabled, and elderly people access to health care. Society now seeks to prevent abuse and neglect of our children. It is my pleasure to welcome one of the brightest stars in the social work galaxy, Alicia Feller. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you.
I'm glad you're here today.
I'm glad to be here.
You're going to tell my audience today the significance of the social worker.
Yes.
And I'm going to start off with this question. Would you please describe to our audience your professional training and any degrees that you have?
Sure. I have a bachelor's of social work and a master's of social work from Southern Connecticut State University. I have also, through the years, had a variety of different professional trainings and evidence-based practices, and I'm currently getting some certifications in holistic stress management.
And what is holistic stress management?
Holistic stress management is a way to sort of manage some stress and anxiety through some different avenues, things like yoga, deep breathing, meditation, mindfulness practices.
Now, your educational path, is that the path traditionally that social workers take to become licensed clinical social workers?
Yes, it is. They don't necessarily have to get a bachelor's degree in social work, but a master's degree in social work is definitely needed.
Before you can be licensed?
Yes.
I see. And the state of Connecticut licenses?
They do.
And how long are the licenses good for?
Your license is good for 1 year. You need to continue to get continuing education credits.
Okay.
And so every year around your birthday is when they send you your license renewal form. You have to answer some questions, make sure you haven't gotten into any trouble, and then the license is good for another year.
Now, Alicia, people don't traditionally think of social workers as, if you will, first responders,
right.
People in the forefront of what's going on. Take as much time as you like and explain to our audience exactly what social workers do. What do you guys do?
So we actually do a variety of different things. We can do, the majority of what we do is to help people solve and cope with different problems and issues that they might be having in life. That's kind of a general. But that encompasses advocating for the clients that we serve, for bills and legislation that will impact some of the people that we serve. If you are a licensed clinical social worker, it means diagnosing and treating behavioral health and mental health issues. It's doing some clinical case management in some cases, which is linking people to resources out in the community. It's making sure that you're coordinating with other providers that are in their life to make sure that they're being treated holistically. So it's really a variety of different things.
Do you do that on a daily basis? You do all of those things on a daily basis, or are you more circumscribed in what you do as a social worker right now?
It actually depends on the clients that you're working with. So for some of my clients, I may just see them for individual therapy, and we're working on specific goals that they have. For others, they might need a little bit more clinical case management, some more linking to services, some help by saying, okay, check this out on this particular website if they need to complete an application for health insurance or something like that.
You know, as I was doing research for this program, I really had no idea of the connection of social workers to civil rights.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking civil rights for people of color, I'm talking across the board.
Yeah.
Social workers were in the vanguard working to change our society, many of them women,
Yes.
when they themselves were denied the very rights they were advocating for. Is that a fair statement to say?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's kind of going back to the early beginnings of social work. That was a large piece of what social workers were doing at the time, was really, that's where the advocacy comes in and standing up for the rights of the disenfranchised. Back then it was a lot of work around with families and women's rights.
Now, the social worker profession, if I'm wrong, please correct me, seems to be populated primarily by females. Is the lion's share of females? Is that wrong or is that right?
No, that's 100% correct.
Okay, and why would that be?
Yeah, it's a largely female-based profession. And I think because of, just going back kind of historically, more of the gender bias against caring roles and looking at that as more of a female type of a role that you might take on.
Unmasculine.
Yes, yeah. We're starting to see more males in the social work field, which is great.
Why is that?
I'm not 100% sure why that is. I know the male colleagues that I have really looked to, they've kind of come through their own maybe change process, and they really want to give back, and they find their voice through social work and their ability to do that through social work.
Now, in my conversations with you, when I interviewed you, you said to me that empathy is one of the greatest qualities a social worker can have. Explain what you meant by that, please.
Yeah. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings and emotions of another person. You may not have necessarily come through the same experiences that someone has, but the ability to put yourself in their shoes and try to understand what they've come through helps build that connection and that rapport. Really just kind of listening, but you need to be able to really try to put yourself in those shoes to understand and feel what someone has gone through. That helps to develop the connection. The connection builds the relationship, and the relationship is the agent of change.
Really? So the relationship begins with the empathetic portion of a human being toward another human being.
Absolutely.
And how we connect with that other fellow or that other person is our empathetic view of them, not necessarily looking at them as less than we are, but being empathetic, caring about them and the situation in which they find themselves. Is that fair?
Absolutely. No one is less than, and we shouldn't be looking down on anyone other than to extend a hand to help them up.
Now, you did say that you do legislative work trying to pass laws. Can you, off the top of your head, tell us about any legislation that you're familiar with right now that social workers were involved in that actually changed things for the better? Do you remember anything?
Well, I can tell you that right now social workers are advocating heavily around healthcare and the proposed healthcare reform. That's definitely something that, they put a big kind of call to arms around, is social workers helping to stand up and fight for that.
That must be a nightmare right now, the uncertainty of people.
It is, absolutely.
People simply don't know.
They don't know.
And we have family members who are sick, loved ones who are sick, we're sick ourselves, and we have no idea how it's all going to play out.
Right.
And that in and of itself creates the mental stress and the problems that eventually wind up on your doorstep. Is that fair to say? Absolutely,
absolutely. It's, after the Affordable Health Care Act was passed, we had a large number of people who finally had insurance that hadn't had insurance for quite some time, which opened a lot of doors for them to be able to get treatment, including behavioral health treatment. So now when you hear about, okay, what's this going to look like, that definitely can provoke some anxiety for people, and anxiety is one of the things that we work with folks around, how to manage that.
Alicia, it's no secret that there are budgetary crises in Connecticut. There's no secret.
Right.
And things are cut to the bone.
Yeah.
So the services that are needed the most are cut, like social worker services. How do you make up? What do you do? How do you make up for the cuts that happen to you? How do you make up the difference? What do you do? What do social workers do?
Yeah, it's What you say is very true, Jim. Usually when the budget cuts happen, the smaller programs that are, again, designed to help the disenfranchised who don't necessarily have a voice for themselves, those programs tend to get cut. And it's really difficult. You have to kind of look for the grassroots type of movement, things that you can replace some of the services with. It's a challenge. It really is a challenge.
Have you found that people have fallen through the cracks because there's not enough money to do what we need to do?
Here and there, yes, absolutely, people do. But I think that there's a real commitment from social workers and other professionals in the helping field to try to really bridge that gap, talk to each other, and where you can provide a resource or a link to someone that can provide a service that was there and now is gone. You really try to do that.
Now, when I went to college, one of the things said to me was not look at social work. I wasn't guided in that direction.
Right.
I had no idea of what social workers did or do until I was much older, and now realize exactly the significance. Education,
Yeah.
critical.
Yes.
How do we start guiding our young people into social work? The young people today have a bad rap in many ways. They're uncaring, they don't care. I don't believe that's true.
Right.
So what do we do? How do we get across to them other than on this fantastic television show that you're on?
So, good question. And through my experiences, I've worked with some young adults, ages 18 to 25, and I've had other family members and friends kind of say, oh, I'm not really sure what I want to do, but I feel like I want to help people. What's social work about? So I think as social workers, we can educate people to what we do, because I think that there's been typically the do-gooders, you're the tree huggers.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I actually met a guy that said that to me recently.
Really?
Yeah, I was telling him about the show, and he said, "Oh, you get a tree hugger show coming up." It's amazing the stigma that's still out there
Yes.
about people who do what you do. I mean, it must be maddening, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It requires some patience around educating people to say, okay, this is what we're doing, and this is how we do it. But what's nice is that as I have kind of shared my experience and what I do and how I do it with some of the younger people, they say, that sounds like something I think I'd like to do, and at least explore it. And that's always what I say to folks. If you're not sure what you want to do, check out your options. Talk to people that are in the field to find out what their experience is.
Let's talk about some advantages of being a social worker personally. What would you say they are, Alicia?
Oh boy, the work is incredibly rewarding.
How so?
We change people's lives, in a really positive way, and that's through empowering people to tap into their own resources that they have that often they don't realize that they have, and it's just really great to watch people grow.
Internal resources or financial resources or both?
It could be both. It could be internal resources, financial resources,
Yes.
Other resources in the community, but really just empowering people to say, what, if you change this just this little bit, you could see a different result. And it's holding hope for people. It really is. A lot of times when people come to you, they're in a pretty desperate moment. And part of what we do is hold hope and until they can get to that place where they feel hope for themselves.
So what's the downside? You told us some of the upsides. You change people's lives.
Yeah.
What's some of the downside of it?
So some of the downside is you're not going to get rich in this field. You don't come into this field to get rich. And you don't always necessarily see the fruits of the seeds that you plant.
Ah, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
So you don't always see
Right.
the fruit
Right.
from the seeds that you've planted.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a critical message to get across to people, because in our generation or in the world, 30 seconds on the TV, we can cure anything with commercials.
Right.
But it doesn't work like that in real life. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
So if people are watching tonight, young people who think they might want to do it, but they have a conception that they're going to come in and see immediate results, forget about it. Right? Is that true?
Well, it can be a little bit of both. You might
Okay.
see some immediate results, adults, but in some cases, it's a longer-term relationship, and sometimes people come and go. They move on. You might change your job and move, that kind of thing, and so you don't necessarily get to see the fruits of the labor, so to speak. So
I'm sure our audience wants to know, what led you into social work?
I always wanted to be in a helping profession when I was younger, and I thought initially, okay, I'll be a nurse, but you need to be good at math and science, and that is not my forte.
Welcome to the club. There we go.
So I enrolled in journalism as a major when I was a freshman. I just really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I was actually in a friend of mine in their dorm room, and she happened to have an intro to social work book. So I picked it up and I started flipping through, and I said, you know what? This is what I want to do. And the very next day I changed my major. I went to the School of Social Work, and I met with someone and talked with them. They helped me choose my classes for the next semester that would start to get me into the social work field. And it was absolutely the best move that I could have made. I love
there's
it.
nothing like finding your niche, right?
Yeah,
there's
absolutely.
really nothing like that.
Absolutely.
So, but you weren't guided from say your home at home, where you came from an environment, like a nurturing environment.
Yeah.
Always where you were caring for people and being involved. Mm-hmm. Is that part of your background and your culture as well?
Yes, I actually have a very close-knit family, a lot of support. We definitely support each other and are there for each other.
How many siblings?
I have two siblings, two sisters.
And where do you fall in there?
I'm the oldest.
Okay, you're big sis. Yeah. All right, okay. Shout out to your sister.
Yes, absolutely. Hi, Trey. Hi, Mel.
There we go. Okay, all right.
Yeah, so, and just by virtue of being the oldest, there's a sense of taking care of, So, yeah, it's kind of what I'm drawn to, I think, who I am.
Now, being a Caucasian woman, okay, we just talked about stigmas, and we know they're there.
Yeah.
The prejudices or the ignorances, they're there. So you see African-American family or Hispanic family or person of color family, and here comes this middle-class white female. What's she going to tell me? You run into that?
Oh, sure.
And how do you deal with that?
Absolutely. Again, I think it's just listening. People want to be heard. And so if I come into a situation like that, I don't assume anything. I don't come in in an authoritative role. I'm here to help however I can.
Yes.
And people can tell if you're genuine or not. They know if you are. And, most times I just start off by saying, tell me what's going on, what got you here. And that's a door for people to start to share. And, again, that's where empathy comes into play. I've not experienced what that family or that individual has experienced, but I can hear you and, kind of say, all right, wow, that must have been really tough, or, that must be really hard. And, that's validation of their experience.
So it's a way of gaining confidence of the people you're talking to, and then their innate sense of, well, this person really does care about what's happening to me kicks in, and then you can help them find the resources internally or what have you to overcome what it is that is bedeviling them in their lives. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, do you find it more difficult to work with men or women?
I don't think it's more difficult to work with either one. It's just different, different needs. It's easier, I think, for women to connect with women usually, depending on what's happened in their background.
Thinking.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, depending on what's happened in their background. And for men, it's really the same thing too. Usually I'll be sought out by someone who's comfortable with working with a woman.
Okay.
In the other situations, I may be referred to somebody, but for the most part, I think it's okay.
Are you multilingual or just English?
No, I'm not. Yeah, just English.
Would being multilingual be an advantage in your field?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would like to learn Spanish. There's a lot of Hispanic individuals and families around that require help and look for help. So yeah, learning Spanish I think would be definitely advantageous.
Alicia, let's shift gears and go back to a dark day in our history here in Connecticut. December 14th, 2012. Down in Newtown, a very disturbed young man went into an elementary school. And when he was finished, our children and our teachers and parents were dead. Mothers, aunts, uncles, babies were dead.
Absolutely.
That was a dark day in our history, Alicia, as you well know. But I understand that subsequent to that dark day, you were there trying to help the families. Would you please talk to our audience about your experiences when you went to Newtown?
Sure. I am part of a disaster response team, and I was asked to go to the Newtown Youth and Family Services Center, where they had, it's a very small center. Newtown's a fairly small, quiet community previous to this. So they were being inundated with families, individuals looking for help after this terrible tragedy. So I was there to help assess folks who came in looking for help. So, I saw first graders, third graders, first responders, spouses of first responders, other school personnel, who came in, and it's something like that completely rocks and devastates a community. You're just never prepared for something like that. So in that moment, it was about assessing to make sure that they were functioning in their day-to-day life, and then linking them to a resource that could work with them longer term. And if they were not functioning okay, maybe getting some more immediate help.
What were some of the things you encountered from the families of the victims when you talked to them and spoke with them and tried to help them? What were some of the feelings? Obviously loss, but what were they going through, Alicia?
It really, I think, rocked their sense of community and of safety in the world.
Yes.
That's really a lot of what I heard about. Is that that we're a small, tight-knit community.
This doesn't happen here.
Yeah, and it shouldn't. It shouldn't happen anywhere. So it was a lot of that. A lot of that.
Now, Alicia, you're not made of stone.
No.
Okay, so it had to have some impact on you.
Yeah.
What was the impact on you of being there in the wake of this deadly massacre?
It was a lot of, again, hearing people's story, their short version of what they had experienced. In the moment, needing to be strong, provide the resources and the support. So every day when I would go home, on my drive home, I would call my parents and just talk to my parents. I shed tears, many of those days. It kind of rocked my sense of safety in the world, and just, thinking like, wow, there's really a lot going on. There's a lot of people who need help. And how do we reach them all,
Now, how long did you stay there as a professional?
I was there for 5 weeks.
5 weeks? See, the world doesn't even know that. Well,
Right.
The world does. I don't.
Yeah.
Many of my listening audience
Right.
might not either,
Right.
viewing audience. 5 weeks you were camped out there. You drove every day there to meet with families. What were some of the other first responders there doing when you were there? Did you work in conjunction with others?
I worked with other social workers who were also assigned to the
Okay, so other
agency.
social
Yes,
workers. Okay.
Yes. So there were 2 or 3 of us just to help manage the number of folks coming in.
How did you find the parents and the relatives' response to you and what your services and what you were doing?
They were very thankful for what really Newtown Youth and Family Services was offering, and the ability to have people to intervene right there and in the moment. So they were thankful, and they needed to hear that what they were doing was okay and right. And the biggest message for folks was try to continue your everyday routine if
Right.
possible.
Yes.
Keep that normalized for yourself and for your children.
Yes, yes.
So I think that's helpful, just those little things in the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for what you did and for what social workers have done for this great country, and please continue to do what you're doing.
Thanks.
Very, very honored to have you here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much.
It's my honor to
That's
be here.
all the time we have for tonight's show. My thanks to my guest, Alicia Feller, for sharing her story. We have to think about our stories. Our stories are as different as each snowflake and are as beautiful and numerous as the stars. Everybody has a story. What's yours? Until next time, good night.